The early morning air in Boston was cool, carrying the faint scent of fresh rain and baked bread from a nearby cafe. Camila Evans moved briskly through the narrow streets, her leather messenger bag slung across her shoulder, heels clicking purposefully against the pavement. At 30 years old, Camila had become a master of focus, a journalist whose precision and drive had propelled her career at a mid-sized investigative magazine. People admired her work but often commented on how little they knew about her. Camila's personal life was a quiet mystery and she preferred it that way. She had routines and she stuck to them. Coffee at her favorite corner cafe at 8 a.m., lunch at her desk while poring over articles, and the occasional night spent curled up on her worn sofa with a glass of wine and a book. It was predictable, comfortable, and she liked it that way. But there was also something missing, something she'd buried beneath deadlines and self-discipline for years. And that was when she met Olivia Meyer. The bookstore was tucked between two larger shops, a quaint place with wide bay windows that let in shafts of golden morning light. Its scent, a warm mix of paper, coffee, and wood, wrapped around Camila like an embrace as she stepped inside, shaking her umbrella and tucking it under her arm. She had come to pick up a book she'd ordered, one of those mystery novels she rarely had time to read but loved collecting nonetheless. She wasn't watching where she was going when she bumped into a small table, sending a half-filled cup of coffee sprawling across its surface. "Oh no!" Camila exclaimed, mortified. She grabbed a napkin from a nearby counter and started dabbing frantically at the mess. "I am so sorry." "Relax," came a soft voice, rich and slightly amused. "It's just coffee. I'm not going to write you a ransom note." Camila paused mid-wipe and looked up, and there she was, Olivia Meyer. She sat in the corner of the shop, her long brown hair tumbling over her shoulders as she tilted her head to smile at Camila. Olivia was beautiful in an understated way, with soft features and hazel eyes that seemed to see more than they should. She had a pen in one hand and a weathered leather notebook resting open in front of her, covered in elegant handwriting. Camila blinked, momentarily disarmed. "I'll replace it. The coffee, I mean." Olivia's lips twitched into a playful smile. "Only if you promise to stop looking like you've committed a crime." She leaned back slightly, tapping her pen against her notebook. "You look like you're in too much of a hurry for a bookstore. Is this your first time slowing down?" Camila couldn't help but chuckle, her earlier embarrassment fading. "Not exactly. I'm just good at multitasking. You know, coffee chaos repeat." Olivia laughed softly, a sound that felt like velvet. "You're doing a stellar job at the chaos part." Camila laughed with her, something she hadn't done in weeks. Genuine laughter that came from deep in her chest. There was something about Olivia's presence that felt calming, magnetic even. It wasn't just her looks. It was the quiet confidence she exuded, the ease with which she seemed to occupy the space around her. "Let me at least buy you a new coffee," Camila insisted. "It's the least I can do." Olivia studied her for a moment, the smile never leaving her lips, then nodded. "Fine. But you owe me a story while we wait for the coffee to brew." That was how it started. Camila didn't expect to see Olivia again, but fate, or something that felt suspiciously like it, kept drawing them together. Over the next few weeks, Camila found Olivia sitting on a park bench she often passed on her morning walks, tucked into a quiet corner of her favorite cafe, or wandering through the farmer's market where Camila bought her weekly produce. At first, Camila chalked it up to coincidence. But Olivia had a knack for turning coincidences into something more. One afternoon, when the two found themselves seated next to each other at a cafe by the river, Olivia tilted her head and said, "You know, you could just admit you're stalking me. It'd save us both a lot of awkward excuses." Camila nearly choked on her espresso. "I'm stalking you," she shot back, incredulous but amused. Olivia's smile widened. "Well, I wouldn't want to brag, but I'm very interesting." Camila laughed again, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "Is that code for charming?" Olivia teased, eyes sparkling. It was, of course. What started as casual coffee chats soon turned into long dinners with wine that tasted too good and conversations that ran late into the night. Camila learned that Olivia was a writer, one who preferred old-fashioned notebooks to computers and spent more time thinking about characters than about herself. Olivia was quick-witted and sharp, but there was a gentleness to her that caught Camila off guard. In return, Camila opened up about herself, something she wasn't used to doing. She told Olivia about her journalism career, about her drive to uncover the truth, and how that sometimes left her lonely. Olivia listened in a way that made Camila feel seen, her thoughtful silences speaking louder than words. Then came the first kiss, a moment that still lived in Camila's mind like a painting. They had been sitting on Camila's balcony, the city spread out in a sea of twinkling lights below them. Olivia turned to her suddenly, tucking a stray lock of Camila's hair behind her ear. "Do you always look this serious when you're happy?" Olivia murmured, her voice soft. Camila blinked at her. "I'm not." Before she could finish, Olivia leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was gentle and slow as though testing the waters. Camila melted into her, the world fading until it was just the two of them and the hum of the city below. Their relationship quickly became intense and all-encompassing. Camila found herself waking up beside Olivia more often than not, their mornings filled with whispered words and quiet laughter. Olivia was a breath of fresh air in her life, a calm port in the storm. But something about Olivia remained just out of reach, like a shadow in the corner of a room. When Camila asked about her past, Olivia would smile faintly and say, "Not much to tell. I was quiet, I grew up, and now I'm here." Her stories were vague, the details always slipping through Camila's fingers. And at first Camila didn't mind. After all, everyone deserved their secrets. But then came the day she found the letter. Camila had been searching Olivia's kitchen for a missing recipe card when she stumbled upon it, a cream-colored envelope tucked beneath a stack of papers. The handwriting on the front was unfamiliar, but the words inside made her stomach turn. "You can keep running, but not forever." Camila stared at the words, her pulse quickening. When Olivia returned home later that evening, Camila held up the letter, her voice trembling slightly. "What is this?" Olivia's face remained calm, though something flickered behind her eyes. She took the letter carefully, folding it shut. "It's nothing, Camila," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Some people from my past don't know when to let go. It's not your problem." Camila searched her face for a trace of reassurance but found none. Olivia's voice was steady, but there was something wrong about it, something hiding just beneath the surface. That was the first time Camila wondered if she really knew Olivia at all. And once the doubt planted its roots, there was no turning back. The days passed and Camila couldn't shake the creeping feeling that something was very wrong. It wasn't just Olivia's sudden silences or her habit of disappearing without a real explanation. It was the way she would flinch ever so slightly at unexpected sounds or lose herself in thought mid-conversation. There was a weight Olivia carried, invisible yet oppressive, and Camila could feel it every time their eyes met. It all started with small, nagging inconsistencies. One Thursday night, Camila had planned a quiet evening with Olivia, just the two of them curled up on the sofa, drinking red wine while a movie played in the background. Olivia, as usual, had smiled and agreed. But as dusk settled over the city and rain tapped steadily against their apartment windows, Olivia started to fidget. "I forgot, I need to go out for a bit," she said suddenly, standing from the couch and reaching for her coat. Camila glanced up from her wineglass, surprised. "Out? Where? It's pouring." "I just need to take care of something," Olivia replied, her voice calm but strangely hurried as she slid her arms into the coat's sleeves. "Now?" Camila pressed, trying not to let the sharp edge of suspicion creep into her tone. "It's important," Olivia said firmly, avoiding her gaze as she grabbed her bag. "Don't wait up for me." And just like that, Olivia was gone, leaving Camila sitting alone on the couch, her fingers tightening around the glass stem. She tried to dismiss the unease twisting in her gut. After all, everyone had their secrets. But the excuses were adding up, and the warmth and safety she had once felt with Olivia now seemed tinged with shadows. The breaking point came a week later on an otherwise unremarkable morning. Camila had been rifling through Olivia's wardrobe, looking for one of her own sweaters that Olivia had borrowed, when her fingers brushed against something hard, tucked far back in the closet. Curious, she pulled it out, a shoebox dusty and scuffed. At first, Camila hesitated. A dull voice in her head reminded her that Olivia had a right to privacy. But that same voice was drowned out by the memory of Olivia's unexplained absences, her vagueness, the edge of fear that sometimes flashed in her eyes. "What are you hiding, Olivia?" Camila sat on the edge of the bed and carefully lifted the lid. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, carefully stacked and held together by an old rubber band. She picked up the first one and unfolded it, her breath catching as her eyes scanned the headline. Young teacher Emily Rhodes disappears without a trace. Camila's brows furrowed. Emily Rhodes? The article described a disappearance that had occurred 7 years earlier in a small town in Maine. Emily, a beloved local teacher, had vanished one evening without a word, leaving behind her family, her job, and her entire life. Police had found no signs of foul play, and the case had eventually gone cold. Camila frowned and flipped to another clipping. This one included a photo, a grainy black and white image of a young woman with long wavy brown hair and soft features. Camila's heart stopped. The woman in the picture was Olivia. Or at least she looked exactly like her. Her hands trembled as she went through the other clippings, all of them recounting the same story. Emily Rhodes, adored and seemingly happy, had disappeared overnight. It was as though the earth itself had swallowed her whole. The headlines painted a picture of speculation and tragedy. Had Emily run away? Had something terrible happened to her? No one knew. Camila's mind raced as she stared at the photo again. It was Olivia, or Emily. But how? Her pulse pounded in her ears as she shoved everything back into the box and replaced it in the closet. When Olivia came home later that evening, her expression warm as she kissed Camila's cheek, Camila could barely meet her eyes. "Are you okay?" Olivia asked, noticing her silence. Camila forced a small smile. "Yeah. Just tired." But the truth was that something had cracked inside her. That night, as they lay side by side in bed, Olivia's breathing evened out, and Camila knew she had fallen asleep. Camila, however, lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The questions wouldn't stop spinning in her mind. Who is Olivia Meyer? She couldn't let it go. The next day, Camila spent every free moment digging into the story. She scoured online archives, tracked down the full articles from the clippings, and pieced together Emily Rhodes's life. The details chilled her. Emily had been described as quiet and kind, a teacher who loved her students. She had no criminal record, no history of drama, just a normal woman who had simply vanished. Camila found herself staring at the grainy photo of Emily on her laptop screen. The resemblance was uncanny. It couldn't be a coincidence. That night, Camila couldn't hold back any longer. She confronted Olivia after dinner, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Who is Emily Rhodes, Olivia?" The fork in Olivia's hand clattered to her plate. Her face went pale, her lips parting slightly as though the air had been knocked from her lungs. "What? Don't lie to me," Camila continued, her voice trembling with the effort of holding back her emotions. "I found the box. The newspaper clippings. Emily Rhodes disappeared 7 years ago, and she looks exactly like you. So tell me, who is she?" For a moment, Olivia didn't say anything. Her expression was unreadable, but her knuckles turned white as she gripped the edge of the table. "You were going through my things?" Her voice came out sharp, defensive. "That's not the point," Camila said, her frustration bubbling over. "Why do you have those clippings? Why does this woman look like you? Who are you, Olivia?" Olivia pushed back her chair abruptly, standing so quickly that it scraped against the hardwood floor. "You're invading my privacy," she said coldly, her voice trembling slightly. "You had no right." Camila stared at her, her heart breaking at the wall Olivia was building between them. "And you have no right to lie to me," she shot back. "I thought I knew you. I thought you trusted me. But now I don't even know who you are." For a moment, Olivia just looked at her, eyes wide and wet with something Camila couldn't quite name. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Olivia said, "If you trusted me, you'd let me explain." "In my time." Camila's throat tightened, but the words poured out before she could stop them. "And how am I supposed to trust you when everything about you is a lie?" The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's eyes shone with tears, but she said nothing. Finally, she turned and walked toward the door, pausing only to whisper, "You don't understand." "Not yet." And then she was gone, leaving Camila standing alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding as though it might shatter. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Olivia came and went as though moving through a fog, her face pale and distant, her smile hollow. Camila, desperate for answers, could no longer sit idle. That was how she found herself sitting in her car one night, following Olivia as she drove toward the outskirts of the city. The streets grew darker, the buildings fewer and farther between, until Olivia's car finally turned into the driveway of an old, weather-beaten house. Camila parked down the street, her hands shaking as she watched through the rain-streaked windshield. Olivia stepped out and approached the house, disappearing inside. The tension was unbearable. After a long wait, Camila got out, creeping silently toward one of the front windows. Peering through the glass, her breath caught in her throat. Inside, Olivia stood in the center of the living room, facing a man Camila didn't recognize. He was older, tall, and imposing, his posture rigid as he gestured sharply toward Olivia. She looked small in comparison, her expression tense, her shoulders drawn in. The man said something, his words muffled, but Olivia shook her head, her face pleading. Camila's stomach churned as the truth hit her like a blow. Olivia, no, Emily was scared. And whoever this man was, he wasn't here to help her. When Olivia returned home hours later, Camila was waiting, her voice low but filled with fury and hurt. Who was that man, Olivia? Why were you with him? Olivia froze, tears pooling in her eyes. Camila, please, don't push me. I can't keep doing this, Camila said, her voice breaking. If you don't trust me with the truth, then how can I trust you at all? Olivia looked at her for a long moment, her eyes filled with a sadness that seemed to swallow her whole. I want to tell you, she whispered. But I don't know how. And with those words, the fragile trust between them began to crumble. Camila stared at the road stretching endlessly ahead of her, her hands clutching the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She had been driving for hours, the Boston skyline long behind her as she pushed west toward the small forgotten town in Maine where Emily Rhodes had last been seen. The drive felt surreal. Each mile took her further from the life she knew and deeper into the mystery of the woman she loved. A woman she wasn't sure she truly knew at all. Her thoughts raced with questions, but one echoed louder than all the others. Why didn't Olivia trust me enough to tell me the truth? She thought of Olivia's pale face and trembling voice the night she confronted her, her plea not to push for answers still ringing in Camila's ears. But it was too late for that now. Something dark and dangerous was lurking just beneath the surface of Olivia's life, and Camila couldn't stand idly by, not when the woman she loved was so clearly terrified. The town where Emily Rhodes had disappeared, Blue Hill, Maine, was exactly as Camila had imagined it. Small, quiet, and heavy with the weight of its own history. It sat nestled near the edge of a sprawling forest, the trees casting long shadows over the crumbling edges of old homes and forgotten buildings. The air smelled faintly of pine and distant rain, and the main street, lined with aging storefronts, looked like it hadn't changed in decades. Camila parked outside a diner on the corner, its neon sign flickering in and out. Stepping inside, she was greeted by the warmth of greasy food and the hum of quiet conversations. The handful of patrons turned briefly to glance at her before returning to their meals. She approached the counter where an older woman with graying hair was pouring coffee into chipped mugs. The woman glanced up, her expression polite but guarded. "You're not from around here," she said, more statement than question. "No, I'm not," Camila replied, offering a faint smile as she slid onto a stool. "I'm a journalist. I'm looking into an old case, a woman named Emily Rhodes. Do you remember her?" The woman froze, the coffee pot pausing mid-pour. A beat of silence passed before she set the pot down and turned fully to face Camila, her brow furrowing deeply. "Why are you digging that up?" "I just need to understand what happened to her," Camila said carefully, trying not to sound confrontational. "Please. Anything you can tell me would help." The woman hesitated, her gaze searching Camila's face for something. Maybe sincerity, maybe determination. Finally, she let out a slow sigh. "Emily was a sweet girl. Kind quiet. She didn't deserve what happened to her." Camila leaned forward, her heart pounding. "What did happen to her?" The woman glanced around as though afraid someone might overhear. "Emily was in trouble," she said quietly. "She was involved with a man she shouldn't have been. Samuel Whitmore." The name dripped with disdain. Big businessman, well-connected. A real snake in a suit. Camila's skin prickled. "What kind of trouble?" The woman's expression darkened. "People around here don't like to talk about it, but it was no secret. Whitmore had power and he used it to control her. At first they were a couple, or so people thought. But it turned ugly. When Emily tried to leave him, she started saying she'd report him for things. Fraud, blackmail, God knows what else. After that, it was like he wouldn't let her go." "What do you mean?" Camila's voice was barely above a whisper. She told a few close friends that Whitmore was following her, threatening her. Emily was scared all the time, jumping at shadows. And then one day she disappeared. Camila swallowed hard. And you think Whitmore had something to do with it? The woman's lips thinned. I don't think. I know. But Whitmore had money connections. The police did their job but half-heartedly and nothing stuck to him. It was like Emily had vanished into thin air. Camila sat back, the weight of the woman's words settling over her like a stone. Emily hadn't just disappeared, she had run for her life. And now, after all these years, Whitmore had found her again. The next person Camila tracked down was a woman named Sharon, one of Emily's closest friends from back then. Sharon lived in a modest house at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown hedges and a rickety wooden fence. She was reluctant to speak at first, but something in Camila's pleading eyes must have softened her resolve. Emily was like a sister to me, Sharon said, sitting stiffly in her living room with her hands curled around a cup of tea. When she told me she was leaving town, I begged her to go to the police. To tell someone, anyone. But she was too afraid. Afraid of Whitmore? Camila asked. Sharon nodded. He's a dangerous man, Miss Evans. Emily knew that if she went to the police he'd find a way to silence her. He always did. So she ran instead. She said she'd go somewhere he'd never look for her. But I thought she was gone for good. Camila's throat tightened. She's alive, she said softly. She's living under a new name. She's Olivia Meyer now. Sharon's eyes widened. She's alive. Yes, Camila replied. But he's found her again. She's terrified and she's trying to run all over again. Sharon set her cup down, her expression a mix of relief and anguish. You have to help her, she said urgently. You can't let him take her life from her again. I won't, Camila promised, though the weight of those words hung heavy on her shoulders. When Camila returned to Boston, the apartment was dim and silent. She found Olivia in the bedroom, surrounded by half-packed bags and open drawers. Where are you going? Camila asked, her voice tight with both anger and fear. Olivia jumped slightly, spinning to face her. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale in the low light. Camila, where are you going? Camila repeated, stepping closer. Are you running again? I don't have a choice, Olivia whispered, her voice breaking. He's here, Camila. Samuel found me. If I stay, he'll what? Hurt you. Camila's voice cracked as tears blurred her vision. You don't have to do this alone, Olivia. You don't have to run again. Olivia shook her head fiercely, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the dresser. You don't understand. If I stay, he'll come after you too. He'll ruin your life just like he ruined mine. I don't care, Camila said, crossing the room and grabbing Olivia's hands. Listen to me. I know who Samuel Whitmore is. I went to Blue Hill. I talked to people who knew you, Emily. I know what he did to you. And I swear to you I'm not letting him win. Olivia's eyes filled with tears, her mask of composure crumbling. Camila, I can't let you get hurt because of me. You won't, Camila said, squeezing her hands tightly. I love you, Olivia. I'm not letting you face this alone. We'll figure it out. Together. For a long moment, Olivia just stared at her, tears spilling down her cheeks as though she couldn't quite believe the words Camila had said. Then, with a choked sob, she collapsed into Camila's arms, clinging to her as though she were the only thing keeping her afloat. I'm so tired of running, Olivia whispered, her voice muffled against Camila's shoulder. Then stop, Camila murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. We'll make him stop. As they stood there together, wrapped in each other's arms, Camila felt the enormity of what they were up against settle over her. Samuel Whitmore was powerful, dangerous, and relentless. But Olivia, Emily, had already spent years of her life in fear. Camila wouldn't let him take another second. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The night felt unnaturally still, the air heavy with tension as though the world itself knew what was about to unfold. Camila stood in the dim glow of the kitchen light, her hands gripping a folder filled with evidence they had painstakingly collected over the past week. Her heart pounded steadily in her chest, each beat carrying the weight of what they were about to do. Across the room, Olivia sat at the small dining table, her head bowed, a strand of her dark hair falling across her face as she turned a small pendant nervously between her fingers. Are you sure about this? Camila asked softly, breaking the silence. Olivia looked up, her hazel eyes searching Camila's face for something. Courage, reassurance, love. I don't want to live in fear anymore, Olivia said firmly, though her voice trembled just slightly. He's taken enough from me. I won't let him take you too. Camila crossed the room and knelt in front of Olivia, taking her hands gently. We're doing this together. You're not alone anymore. I won't let him win. Olivia swallowed hard, squeezing Camila's hands tightly. I don't know what I did to deserve you. Camila smiled faintly, brushing her knuckles across Olivia's cheek. You loved me. That's enough. The small town square in Blue Hill, Maine, was cloaked in darkness as Camila and Olivia stepped out of the police car. A chill hung in the air, sharp and biting, sending shivers down Olivia's spine. The old street lamps flickered faintly, casting pale golden circles of light across the cracked pavement. Samuel Whitmore's house loomed at the far edge of the square, a massive structure surrounded by wrought iron fencing, its silhouette stark against the deep blue of the night sky. Camila glanced at Olivia, who stood beside her, her shoulders tense. Are you okay? Olivia nodded, though her hands were trembling at her sides. I will be. Detective Harris, the only officer willing to reopen Emily Rhodes's case despite Samuel's influence, approached them. He was a gruff, middle-aged man with salt-and-pepper hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, but his dark eyes held a softness that spoke of experience with survivors. Stay close to me, Harris said in a low voice. Whitmore won't see this coming and he's not going to have anywhere to run. I need you two to stay out of the way until we secure him. Understand? Yes, Camila said quickly, her gaze flickering toward Olivia. We'll stay back. But Olivia's jaw was set, her eyes fixed on the house. I need him to see me, she said, her voice cold and steady. I need him to know he doesn't own me anymore. Harris studied her for a moment, then nodded. We'll make sure he knows. Inside the house, the air was suffocating, thick with silence and dust. The ornate interior was dimly lit, its grand chandeliers now relics of faded wealth. Samuel Whitmore sat in a leather armchair in the center of the large drawing room, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass as though he hadn't a care in the world. His expression, however, darkened when Olivia stepped into the room. Well, he said smoothly, his voice a low rumble that sent ice down Olivia's spine. The prodigal woman returns. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten your place, Emily. Camila watched from just outside the doorway, her fists clenching as the man's voice filled the room like poison. She could see the tension in Olivia's shoulders, the way her hands curled into fists at her sides, but Olivia didn't falter. My name is Olivia, she said firmly, lifting her chin. And I'm not afraid of you anymore. Samuel chuckled, though his eyes gleamed with something dangerous. You always were a stubborn girl, he said, rising slowly from his chair. Do you really think running away and changing your name could change what you are? What do you owe me? I don't owe you anything, Olivia shot back, her voice rising. You destroyed my life. You tried to own me. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. Samuel took a slow, deliberate step toward her, his expression shifting into something cruel and predatory. You're making a mistake, Emily. Stop calling me that. Olivia's voice broke as years of fear, anger, and pain surged through her. You don't get to control me anymore. Harris and the other officers moved in then, their presence breaking the invisible tension in the room. Mr. Whitmore, Harris said firmly, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. You're under arrest for stalking, harassment, and violating multiple restraining orders. Samuel turned sharply, his face twisting with fury. You have no proof, he spat. Harris stepped forward, holding up a thick file, Camila and Olivia's evidence painstakingly collected over the past week. Oh, we've got plenty of proof, Harris replied. And this time you're not talking your way out of it. Samuel's expression shifted, his confidence crumbling as the officers moved in to cuff him. He shot one last, venomous glance at Olivia. This isn't over, he snarled. Olivia held her ground, meeting his gaze without blinking. Yes, it is, she said softly. You can't hurt me anymore. As they led Samuel out of the house, Camila rushed to Olivia's side, pulling her into her arms. Olivia sagged against her, the tension finally breaking as sobs racked her body. Camila held her tightly, running her fingers through Olivia's hair and whispering softly. You did it, Camila murmured. You're free now. The weeks after Samuel's arrest passed in a blur of relief and exhaustion. Back in Boston, Camila and Olivia fell into a quiet routine, their apartment feeling safer, warmer. Olivia spent hours writing, her words pouring onto the pages of her notebook as though releasing years of pain she had buried. Camila watched her with quiet pride, always there to offer a steady hand when the memories became too much. One morning, the sunlight spilled into their apartment in golden streaks, warming the hardwood floors and filling the air with the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Camila sat across from Olivia at the small kitchen table, watching as her girlfriend carefully folded a stack of papers, her story written for the world to see. "You don't have to do this," Camila said softly. Olivia looked up, her expression calm but resolute. "I want to," she replied. "It's time to stop hiding." Camila smiled faintly, reaching across the table to take Olivia's hand. "You don't have to run anymore." Olivia's eyes softened as she squeezed Camila's hand gently. "And now I know I'm not alone." Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Camila returned home to find Olivia standing by the window, holding an envelope. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she held the letter out to Camila. "What is it?" Camila asked cautiously, taking the envelope and pulling out the single sheet of paper inside. The message was short, typed in plain black letters. "You can win a battle, but the war is far from over." Camila felt a chill ripple through her body as she looked up at Olivia, whose expression was set in quiet determination. "He won't take this from us," Olivia whispered, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Not this time." Camila nodded, slipping an arm around Olivia's waist as they stared out the window together. Beyond the glass, the world seemed peaceful, but they both knew better. Whatever storm was coming next, they would face it together.